Welcome to Careers in Discovery, your window into the world of leaders in pharma and biotech. Brought to you by Singular Talent, making hiring better for organizations involved in drug discovery and R&D. Darren Pitt is the Chief Scientific Officer of VisusNano, a company developing a novel drug-device combination to treat issues surrounding cataract surgery, one of the most widely performed procedures in the world. We talked to Darren about what those problems are and what he's learned in his varied career so far. On this episode of Careers in Discovery, I'm joined by Darren Pitt of VisusNano. Darren, welcome to the show.
Hi there, yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Great to see you, which wasn't a pun, I apologize. Tell us a bit about the work that you're doing. You're working on a problem that affects a lot of people at some point in their life, particularly as they get older. And I know that you're looking at this from a veterinary point of view as well, so a lot of animals as well. Tell us a bit about the work you're doing around cataract patients and how you're helping them.
Yeah, no, definitely. So cataracts is the most common surgery performed worldwide.
Okay.
And so as you get older, you're more likely to get it. You can get it at any age. So as you know, your children as young as 2 can have this cataract surgery. But obviously, it's more common in elderly patients, and it's getting more and more prolific. Sorry, because of the aging population.
Yeah.
So cataracts is it's quite a simple procedure. Once your eye becomes cloudy, you remove that old lens and you put in an acrylic lens, and that is in there for the rest of life. And that is the current procedure. It's quite quick and easy. There are some complications associated with it, and therefore you need a drop regime afterwards. And those drops are needed for about a month. And the problem with that, a lot of the patients, like we said, are elderly, so there's comorbidities, arthritis, dementia, and there's lots of health economic problems in terms of needing carers to come in and help do these drops. And we know from several studies that no one ever does the drop regime perfectly,
right,
or not even really close to well. Actually, people say they've done it, but they've missed. It's dripped down the eye. You know how difficult drops can be anyway.
Yes.
So what we're trying to do is to eliminate the need for drops by having the drugs already impregnated on the lens, which is transplanted into the eye. So that will remove the need for the drops. And there's several different drops that people require. Initially, we're looking at anti-inflammatories, and that is, if inflammation occurs, that results in pain. So that's one of the main ones we're targeting to start with, and that is required for two bottles per month. You'll need these drops for. So removing that, and then the long-term plan could potentially be also antibiotics, because infection is not particularly common in the Western world. But if it does occur, you'll see your doctor in a couple of days, and they can give you the strong dose of antibiotics you need. But in rural areas, you may not go back for a month, and then by that point there'll be really serious complications. So there's long-term plans for that as well. And like you mentioned, what we kind of discovered on our journey is how it affects animals as well. So there's up to 20,000 cataract surgeries on dogs each year, and that's just in the UK.
Okay.
And again, people really do love their pets, and it can happen quite early in some dogs where certain breeds. So they could be blind for quite a young age. And with dogs and cats, there's additional complications with inflammation. So losing an eye is actually quite common in a dog who has cataracts.
Right.
So it's got, basically because the drops, you just can't get the drops in their eyes. As you can imagine, it's quite difficult.
Yeah.
And potentially you can leave your dog in the veterinary surgery for a couple of months. So they could have to be done at night as well. But obviously that's expensive, and even then it's not particularly effective. So this could be used to treat animals as well. One of the people we work with has actually done cataracts on animals, such as elephants and a penguin as well. Has been done recently.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, apparently penguins get it quite often, but
Okay.
so maybe it could be a useful treatment for them as well in the future.
I see. Okay. I didn't realize it was the most common surgery in the world. That's
So I
interesting.
think in America it's ingrown toenail pips it, but I think overall in the world it's the cataract surgery. So yeah, it's obviously a big problem.
Yeah, but like you say, I suppose, there's a lot of practice around doing the surgery, and a lot of the time it's a straightforward procedure, but I suppose it's a very vulnerable part of the body, right? And also a part that people get very paranoid about anything to do with their sight, right? For obvious reasons. And I guess the
Yeah,
impact can be significant.
that's it, definitely. I mean, it's not a particularly nice procedure to think about when you do it. Everyone who has it done said actually it was really easy, but
Yeah.
the thought of having your eye kind of clamped open and having it's a surgical procedure,
Yeah.
so it can be quite daunting and scary for patients. Although the surgery is quite slick now, obviously, been going on for years and years, so it should only take 5 to 6 minutes to actually
Mhm.
do the procedure. Like they say, it's the aftercare, which is the
Yeah.
big issue.
I remember my granddad having it done years ago, and he was saying it was just so strange seeing this knife come towards your eye, and didn't feel anything, and it was all fine. But it's just such a sort of daunting situation.
Yeah, like you said, people are very paranoid about their eyes. There's been um, studies or surveys done, and people, would you rather lose an arm or a leg, or vision's always the last. No one ever wants to lose their eyesight. So it's such an important area to try and do, and reduce any complications around that surgery is obviously the aim.
And so then what you're doing is, I suppose I'm simplifying here, so apologies, but building a sort of release mechanism that can house the drugs into the lens itself. And I imagine there are a lot of scientific challenges around that, not least of which would be size, I expect.
That's it. It's been tried. There's been a few patterns around since the 90s of people trying to do this,
Mm,
impregnating the lens with the drugs. It's getting the release rates correct, so you need the
yeah.
dosage and the correct time. Obviously, it's quite difficult to get the desired amount on there as well. So that's one challenge, just getting the correct release kind of curves. And then the next challenge is, definitely the engineering challenge on how to attach this onto lenses already. Could we design our own lens, or at the moment we're kind of looking at attaching our device onto lenses already out there in the market. So and then that will come as a single kind of package lens, but we're not trying to alter the original lens too much. It's kind of from a business perspective as well. There's that's a medical device in its own right. So
Mm,
kind of trying to reinvent the wheel almost for that to then put our device on is tricky. So we're trying to be a bit clever about it and just have an additional step onto the original device. And these things are becoming more common now. You see these kind of dual kind of combination products
yes.
in the market, and the FDA starts updating their rules in terms of combination products and that. So it's quite an interesting area to get into. But like I say, there's various challenges, regulatory wise, engineering wise, chemically. So it's quite an interesting area to work in.
I can imagine. And in a business with so many moving parts and different disciplines interacting, you're obviously the chief scientific officer. Tell us a bit about where you spend your time and the things that you're most involved in.
Yeah, so originally it was more the feasibility. So could
Right.
we, just get the drug releasing? Could we, attach it correctly to the lenses that are out there? So that was kind of a lot of the wet lab work, and that was where I kind of started getting involved. And then over time now we're moving more into the design optimization. So we're working with companies who can, make it, in a better word, look prettier. But obviously with prettiness comes repeatability.
Right.
Uh, and then also so it's feasible for manufacture, where I'm making it in the lab and say I'm cutting little parts in the films, these are
Hmm.
tiny little things, it's not very repeatable. Whereas we're looking at manufacturing techniques such as micromolding, where you can do hundreds of thousands of these a week, which falls in line with the lenses. They make hundreds of thousands of these lenses a week, so we
Yeah.
need to keep up to that scale. So now my day to day is more working with these companies with the experience. We're looking at getting a bioengineer involved to join our team full time, who has that experience. So I'm now moving away from my experience as a chemist, and I was working on those kind of drug release profiles, and now we're trying to make an actual product. We're working with several partners who have better experience, and I think that's how it happens. As a product evolves and develops, you've got to work with other people and And then obviously part of that is the regulatory side of things. We think we could easily just do this, and then someone say, no, that's, you can't use that chemical, or that it can't be shaped in a certain way, because
Right.
that will prevent certain tests failing the regulatory standards, even up to like packaging and labeling. Things that we don't think about in the lab, now we have to think about. And it's quite good as part of the startup, you get involved in all these conversations. You don't just pass it off to the regulatory group and say, this is what we've done, can you get it up to code? It's kind of a feedback loop with all these different people. So that's moving away from the science and more into just the general management's the right word, the project managing maybe, but that's kind of with everyone in the company. We all kind of do several roles as a small company, and we are hoping to expand and streamline the process a bit more, and that's kind of where we are as a business. Moving from lab scale to almost a proper company, as it were, not just within London
lab. So that's good. So the decision was taken that it wasn't feasible for you to make them all by hand, I take it.
No, that's it. Unfortunately,
yeah. And you mentioned there that you're a chemist by training. That was your initial background, and that's where you qualified. So tell us a bit about, let's go back to the beginning. Tell us a bit about that. So tell us a bit about why a career in science, why chemistry, what sort of started you off on this path?
I mean, I wouldn't say there was like a moment where I thought, I definitely want to be a scientist, or anything like that. But I did always definitely enjoy science at school. Probably my best subject. And our school didn't have a sixth form, so I was very much on the apprenticeship. The apprenticeship route was everyone I knew and worked. Had offers to come to work with my friends as plumbers and whatnot. But I just enjoyed science, so I did all three sciences at A level, and then just kind of picked chemistry again. I had no real plans of doing it long term. I just thought I enjoyed it, and I originally, from my accent, you can tell I'm from London, specifically South London. So I knew a lot of people, or friends and family, who suggested, get a degree and then you can go into London and retrain as an accountant for the one of the big fours, or an auditor. And chemistry was a good degree. It had logic, had maths. So I just kind of did pick that over the three subjects. Went to Loughborough to do that, and then almost straight away really enjoyed it much more than I did at school.
Right.
I enjoyed school, but I'd never really thought much about it. But as I started doing it in university, I enjoyed that hands-on experience, as well as the kind of the teachings behind it. And then just by chance, they did a placement year at GSK. They kind of went around as a year in industry. So I thought, I'll go through some interviews, and got the GSK placement. That was at the Harlow site, but I moved to Stevenage halfway through. Did a restructure, and it was obviously a great experience. And I think that's where it cemented it for me. Is I was in big pharma at the time, but it was just really interesting. Working in the lab as well as some desk-based stuff. It's a good mix. It wasn't just there's always a new challenge each day, and I really enjoyed that. And then when I went back to Loughborough for my last 2 years, I changed from doing my 3-year bachelor's, I then did a master's, because I was enjoying it. Thought the extra experience was good. And then from there, I did a PhD down in Southampton. Again, I wasn't sure that there was a logic behind it in terms of I wanted to go into academia, or I just felt it probably potentially as a career move. I don't think maybe I felt that I'd be frustrated if a PhD held me back from because I didn't have a PhD. I think at the time I was always thinking, the GSK is big pharma. Look, I did my final year did a project in AstraZeneca. There was an AstraZeneca at Loughborough at the time. So again, I had a bit of experience in this big pharma world.
Yeah, I see.
And I thought, get the PhD and go to big pharma was kind of my plan at the time.
Right.
So that's kind of, I guess, my thinking at that time. Definitely academia wasn't for me. I enjoyed the PhD and got a paper out there, and that was good. But staying academia was never really an option. I think I did like the kind of application, or seeing a goal at the end of a project. And that's what my PhD was about, with doing kind of drug delivery with polymers. So hence, what I ended up with business in the end.
Yes.
But there's always I could see a goal, and some academia where it's a bit like blue sky thinking, really early stage, which is obviously really important. Those kind of ideas and that kind of really cutting edge kind of they just do it for academic interest almost. Eventually turn into feasible products, and but that's years and years down the line. I think I work better with that. Like, here's a patient, or here's in our lab actually we had a few kind of people of us who work at the hospital, a few people working in the engineer department, some working with computing. So we very much find a application for a project and then just kind of go with it. So people working on solar cells and that. So it was quite an interesting lab to work in. We weren't kind of all focused on one target. But from then, just while I was writing up, I got a placement. Well, it's a 3-month contract because someone was long-term sick leave, and that was a company called Asica.
Yes.
And they're a contract manufacturer. There used to be an old lab that was down in Kent. And again, really enjoyed that large-scale chemistry, but it was for a reason. You had, right, in 2 months' time, we need to make this drug because it's getting sent to Japan, and if we don't make it in 2 months' time, you're not getting paid. And it was really, that was good. That kind of same thing of there's time limits, and you're doing it for a purpose. You're providing this drug for a customer, which then goes off to help people. So that was really good. I really enjoyed that side of things, the manufacturing side. Did a bit of mix and match, did some shift work as the chemist there, and did some office work. So that was really interesting. And then from there, went to a company called Tridivi, which is chemical solvent waste. So again, I really enjoyed that company. That was more of a move because for people management. So I was kind of the plant manager there, and helping work with the manager who's obviously led it. The guy called Steve was great. We kind of led the shifts and did the setting up what was being run, what products we needed to get out of the door, and making those plans, and as well as all the safety side and the people management behind that. And again, that was really, really interesting and a great learning experience because it was quite fast moving, probably much faster moving than the chemical manufacturing for APIs and drugs. Because you kind of planned a year ahead, like this is going to come in, and we need to do all the clean down and that. But with the solvent recycling, it was a much faster turnaround. If someone said, we need this product in next week, someone would have to source the crude material in, would have to make space on the plants, wash it, clean it, make sure it was up to spec, get it shipped out. There's a lot of logistics work as well, and working with the sales team. So that was a really busy but interesting kind of time. Again, a bit of wearing many hats as well, which is quite a good experience.
Yes.
So that's great. But during this time, so my co-founders had an idea for the company, which is VisusNano now. They were PhDs working in Southampton, so that's kind of where the link was. Although we never worked together, my group, which worked with the hospital, they knew about some of the drug delivery work I was doing. So they had this idea. One of our co-founders, Philip, was an eye surgeon. He was doing his PhD down at Southampton at the time, and they did a competition to see a theoretical business plan competition, and they didn't do that well on it. They come out of it saying, actually, this is a really good idea.
Right.
I think they went for a big combinated lens and a big too much, and the business plan wasn't quite right. But from that, they said, actually, we could distill this down. There's this problem in cataracts. So him and our co-founders, Elodie and Joanna, so they kind of worked, although Philip was an eye surgeon, Joanna was a neurobiologist. They worked in the same office together. And then they had this idea and just got hold of me and said, hi, we know you're a chemist. Is this possible to deliver drugs? I was like, okay, this is a bit weird. So they got hold of me via Facebook.
Right, okay.
But I was still going down to Southampton quite a lot to see some friends. So I was like, you know what, I'll pop by the hospital and say hi. And I was like, okay, this sounds like a potentially good idea. But I work with drug-eluting polymers so that we could give this kind of idea a go. We won a competition called BioStars, which is now Panacea Stars, based out of Oxford. And that got us about £30,000 of funding to give this a go. So at the time, we only had a business plan and put some patents in and said, this is how we would do it, and maybe a little go in the lab, but nothing concrete. And then that first £30,000 let's do our initial designs and show, actually, yes, we can get attachment, we can get some form of drug release. And then from there, Joanna, who's now our CEO, she joined an incubator where we got a bit more funding for £100,000 with the Rebel Bio, which is now Indie Bio and SOSV over in the US. And from that, she kind of developed a business plan a bit better, got some angel investors in, kind of structured just to become a real company. And that's when I took the leap to leave Tradibi to join full time as the CSO, and then start doing the actual work, which led us to get the 30-day kind of release for the drug that we're using at the moment, dexamethasone, to get that to kind of a product feasibility stage. And then since then, that was 2018, she joined that incubator, and then since then we've just been kind of growing and doing, basically getting from a lab-based idea and a lab-based kind of very rudimental product into now something which we can start to see, getting machined and actually turning into an actual real product which we can see going into the eye. So that's kind of the journey, the journey from start to finish, I guess.
Yeah, interesting. And a couple of things I wanted to explore in that. So one of the things I always notice about the pharmaceutical industry, and I think the same applies to whether it's medical devices or diagnostics or what have you, is it's quite a closed door sometimes for people who don't have experience in that industry because it's so regulated and because it's so specialized. But I think one of the impacts of that, or one of the symptoms of that, is that you end up with not a hugely diverse range of backgrounds in terms of technical backgrounds. So people tend to come from within the industry and move around within the industry. Now, so you have that experience, and you started out with the pharmaceutical sector, and then you went and did something outside of the industry. And as you said, it was slightly different in terms of pace and in terms of sort of the demands on that. Do you feel that couple of years that you spent in solvents has sort of influenced how you work now, coming back into health, and with the things that you took from that?
No, definitely. I think that was a great experience in terms of you've just got to get on and do it. Pick up the phone because it's so fast paced. Sometimes, you can't just send an email saying, "Oh, we need this," or especially with the lorries. Some are already on the road, and we're trying to find out where they are at a certain time, because if they don't come till tomorrow, we miss the whole night shift of some kind of we put something else in between, and you also got to think the compatibility of solvents. So if you put one on the plant, you may involve an extra clean down for it, which take another half a day, and then that's X amount of pounds lost. And because you are working with waste as well, the margins aren't always fantastic. So it's also bringing that kind of, not just when I was in the lab set, say GSK, you're making a potential product which is going to be a drug, but it's not really you just got to think, I'll make these, and then someone down the line will say, yes, this is feasible for a drug. If it doesn't work, we all know small molecules fail all the time. Whereas with the solvent side of things, not only you're my thinking with the chemistry kind of brain of all this work, and an efficiency kind of brain of how can I do this the best way, but also that business kind of stuff comes into play. So even though it wasn't my kind of area to be involved in this, I would have to think, okay, we need to, it's all kind of, it's still financially motivated. So that kind of fast pace and that decision making definitely helps when you go into kind of a small company where you end up doing a bit of everything, and what could potentially be the best route to get to the market. So we do animal trials and human trials, and you can't do that route because you don't have the money. So you have to kind of piece together bit by bit. If this is the most effective test we can do here, so we'll do this test in we've got a really good company we work with called Obstetrics, who have a really good eye model who it mimics animals really and humans really well. So it's a lot cheaper. It's really effective. It gives us great data, so we can use that rather than do animal studies, obviously, which is great because you don't really do animal studies.
No, sure.
But it also kind of shows and validates our point. But at the same time, some people are like, well, that data isn't good enough for me to believe it's going to work. We still need to see this data. But because we've only got X amount in the bank, we've got to take that route, and that's the route we plan. And then, then we've got to raise more money. And as small startups always raise more money. So those that experience in the deputy assault world helps that, because you always think of many different things, not focused on one area, which is great. And like I say, the fast-paced nature of calling up, getting things done, is one of the really useful things as well.
Yeah.
Everything from regulation, even at the moment, my current problem is I'm trying to post something to America, which is chemically,
Right.
it could be, it's classified as a dangerous good, and it's just trying to get the correct documentation for someone with no experience is a nightmare. But I just have to get on the phone and call people and like,
Yeah,
oh,
of course.
kind of ask for favors. Oh, would you mind sending me the form through? I don't know what I'm doing, kind of thing. Whereas if you send an email, you can go back and forth for days and weeks.
Yeah.
So I think that was a good learning curve, definitely.
Yeah, and it certainly sounds like it's getting you involved in that practical stuff that you like to do. No, it's interesting. So you say, that sort of discipline around how you're using your resources and time and things like that is really useful in a startup company. And I think, maybe the market is changing a little bit given the economic climate, but I think there's traditionally been so much money in healthcare that sometimes you don't get forced to be super efficient and very lean and very effective. But that's always a good discipline to have, is being more effective, right? So it's
But
good to take that in.
no, definitely. I think some of that does come from the manufacturing side as well.
Mm,
But it's all how to reduce clean down times, how to get much through the plant as possible, how to get the efficiencies and the yields up. Whereas other times in the chemistry lab, you just want to kind of show feasibility. So you don't really care if there's a small yield, because that later down the line you can optimize the chemical process to increase the yield. So that's kind of one thing which definitely helped with the manufacturing side of things as well. That you're always thinking, how can I do this quicker and better? And with startups, that's sometimes you need that to beat other potential competition out, and make the most effective use of your finances, really. Because
yes.
not the small companies, it always boils down to the finances, really, because they say they go pretty quick.
No, absolutely, absolutely, and it's an expensive business as
Yeah,
well.
that's it. It's interesting getting that people who work in, who are our investors, they understand that they're going to give our money now, and they're not going to see any returns for years and years.
Mm,
Sometimes we speak to, because we're med tech or biotech, whatever we get kind of classify ourselves as. We have spoken to tech investors in the past, and they can't believe that they're not going to see any returns for years and years
yeah.
and years, if at all. Because regulatory can be quite high, and there's no guarantee of success. So it's quite an interesting area to work in. When you work with these people, they really do understand
Mm,
how this kind of area works, compared to some other people who, let's say, quite not quite naive and blind. They really don't understand how long and how difficult some of these processes do take.
yeah.
So it's quite an interesting mix.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And there's some pretty sophisticated investors around in the sector now that, as you say, do get that. But I think it's always been an attractive sector for investors in general. So you do have to sort of educate sometimes, I think. And you've talked about the companies that you'd worked with prior to joining VisusNano, and they were primarily established companies, right? GSK, AstraZeneca, Asica, Tradaby. These are pretty big established companies, some more than pretty big. Um, was there any nervousness about taking the step into a startup company on your part, or how did you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I had I guess I've always been a bit of a yes person, so it's I think that helps, that you just we'll work it out later kind of attitude with
Hmm.
most things. So that was probably part of it, was my natural kind of tendencies. But when I was at GSK, so obviously it's just a placement year, no real importance.
Yeah.
Just great for some experience. They had a kind of restructuring, so I think I applied, got the placement, and then I got like an email or letter months later saying, oh, by the way, you're going to be working at Harlow for a couple of months, but then you got moved to Stevenage. So by this point, I've already looked at houses and stuff. I was like, okay, it's a bit
Right.
bizarre.
Yeah.
And then, it's just a restructure. I don't know if there's many job losses at the time, but it's one of those ones where, okay, it's quite a dynamic environment. And then when I was at AstraZeneca, which is basically my second kind of foray into like the science world, they shut down that site when I was there. So obviously I
Mm,
finished my placement, because it's the time it takes to wind down and move people around and stuff.
Yeah.
But you do get called into a big meeting, and everyone's got sad faces. There's potential redundancies, and I don't know the full outcomes of how it went for everyone. They would do try their best, and it happens. But almost the first two jobs, I've seen that happen.
I see.
So
Okay.
I would say, the loyalty is really extremely important. When you're at that company, you back them, and you really want to do your best there. But I think sometimes you think, I was quite aware that, not like my granddad and dad, you get into a company and then you're there for 40 years. It's quite, I don't know, there's spells where the big companies, the GSKs, are hiring, and there's spells when they're, restructuring, moving, and then
Yeah, it's true.
years later, they kind of hire a load of people again. It does seem very cyclic, which, that's great. There's always going to be highs coming again. But I think in my head, it wasn't like, it was hard. It was a hard decision, definitely, to leave because I enjoyed it there. I'd say the same actually, basically. I think that was a bit of an easier step because I could see it as a career progression. I would have that kind of bit more people management skills. So then jumping from that to maybe the startup was hard, but I think maybe that early kind of nothing certain, nothing set, kind of no, it wasn't negative, but it's a bit of it was a bit of a shock to see that. I felt a bit more comfortable moving. One thing I did do actually, just want to mention, was when I did take the leap, I asked to get my MBA paid for through VisusNano. So I think that probably helped push me, because that kind of in my head was like have a career progression point. So
Yeah, I
I
see.
thought if
Yeah.
I went to VisusNano, and obviously we only had probably a year's worth of money at the time, if after a year, the technology didn't work, or I had to change jobs again, I would be earning my MBA, so I could go back into industry, go back to company and say, we did this, but here's an MBA, here's another certificate,
Yeah, of
another
course.
notch on the CV. So I think that was a big, took a bit of the weight off, because I didn't feel like it was a step back, or making a bad move, because I could always kind of spin that argument to potential new employers that I did it to gain this experience where I hadn't had before.
Yeah.
So I think actually thinking back now, that probably was a big step. But since moving, it's completely different to anything I could have imagined, anything I've done previously, and it's so enjoyable and extremely stressful sometimes.
Yeah, of course.
So now, after a couple of years of doing it, it'll be, if we can't get regulatory approval or whatnot, it'd be very hard to go back into the real world. I call it. I think the startup life's not the real world, so it'll be interesting how that pans out in the future.
I think it is. I think when you've had your sort of taste of, and of course you've got co-founders, right? So there has to be consensus, and you have to get agreement from people and things like that. But you do have a lot more influence over what you're doing, right, and how you're doing things and stuff like that. I think once you've had an exposure to that, it is very difficult to go back into a corporate environment. Some people can, but I couldn't do it either.
That's it, definitely. I mean, there's some, I say, it's pros and cons of anything,
Yeah.
On the GB shift work, you end up having late days, but once you left, it's quite good, because if say the plant was down, you got to have a run again, or at least you had the plan that this is what's going to happen overnight. I was on call in case there's any issues, but the shift guys, been working there years and years, they knew better than me half the time. If there was an issue on the plant, they could resolve it. So I very much got in the car to drive home, and you rarely think about, there's almost a day's been planned. You kind of get home mode, and you carry on. But with startup, you're always getting emails, and especially because you're working in America, and you're always kind of thinking in the background, I still need to do this, I still need to do that, and it never ends. So that's definitely one of the negatives compared to the previous roles I had. But then, like I say, the flexibility, the travel as well. I think that's good for all science. If you do want to become a scientist, it's universal. So there's lots of jobs all over the world. But sometimes you may get stuck on certain sites for a little while. Whereas with this, we got to go to LA quite a bit, because there's a big ophthalmology hub out there. So see clients there, all conferences and that we need to go to. So ophthalmology based ones. So we're meeting the people we potentially want to partner with, or we need investment from investors at big investment conferences. luckily been all over the country. Joanna, the co-founder, she was out to China for a few weeks to do some competitions over there. We won some money from some Chinese competitions. Got some great experience, met some great people out there, which we wouldn't get my old site because it was on the site. All the work
Right.
on that site.
Yeah.
I might go to a sister site to see them and say hi, and but that's it. With this job, you get to do all of that, which is it's
Yeah,
also
absolutely.
quite fun as, let's say, as a scientist. You might when we get to that role as a BD maybe, but particularly as a lab-based scientist, which I was, you don't get that opportunity, which I do now. Sometimes it gets a bit much, but normally it's enjoyable. I have to say, we're very lucky.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes with it, and I think, as you say, the thing that I think people don't expect about startups is it's the times when you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and you're either so excited about some idea that you've had or so worried about something that you can't then go back to sleep.
That is definitely it. Yeah, I get that with the technical stuff sometimes. I know Jo, the CEO, she said sometimes, and it's a big relief when you kind of get your next financial block because you've got kind of I never plan what I'm going to do afterwards. Like there's definitely times where like actually too much time I'm not going to have a job. We don't have enough money in the bank. And there's obviously irons in the fire. Potentially you could get money in here or there, but as you know, sometimes things you think, oh, that's definitely going to work, or we're definitely get money from this group or this investor. It falls through.
Yes.
And other times, a small conversation you think means nothing. They're like, oh yeah, I know a company which can manufacture that for you, and you're thinking, I've been looking for 3 months for this. It's been driving me crazy, and now we found an in. So it's one of those ones. I think what I do find again with startups is sometimes you feel like you're banging your head for the wall for months and months and nothing's happening, and all of a sudden everything goes super speed, and then again nothing happens for months and months. So it's weird compared to a normal job where you feel like each day you leave, you feel like you've accomplished something at least.
Yes.
Whereas some days you can just go weeks and be like, I'm still no closer to where I need to be.
Yeah.
Which also again adds to the sleepless nights sometimes.
I'm sure, yeah. And I always think, you mentioned this just now, it's a great time to do an MBA when you're starting a business because you've got so many opportunities to use the stuff you're learning, right? And I think sometimes when people do MBAs and they're not involved in a business, then it can become quite theoretical. But how's that been for you, doing both in parallel?
Yeah, no, definitely, it's great. I mean, just when you said earlier about the flexibility of a startup, again, that's one thing which was good as well. When I had exams on or when I had reports due, I was pretty much like, well, I'm having this week off. Whereas in a real job, you've got to take time and book your holiday off, and that, so that was very nice and useful. So just from a actual doing it perspective, it was a lot easier with a startup. But no, definitely the practical side definitely coming in use. I did one of the theoretical project on a business plan startup, and it was basically called Business Pet, and it was VisusNano. If we just were a prep product and how we would raise the money for that, and how our sales channels and how that would work, which potentially could be something which we do in the future. Either we license our product off because the company strategy at the moment is very much the big fish. We want to help patients and have that big market. But there's the potential of the veterinary market, and that could be a side project, or we could license it to a company. And having that kind of on paper and how it would work was great, and also it's really easy compared to some other modules I had for MBA because I could see what I've done before, application, and I can take some things back to the company and say, oh, have you thought about this? So it's definitely worthwhile, like say, doing the two things at once. Some of the project management parts they do in there, or the MBA obviously comes in use. And one thing I found interesting, which I didn't think I would be the kind of, is it called a development leadership module?
Right. Okay.
So the first thing before we started was doing the kind of Belbin tests and the Myers-Briggs and that. And I was being cynical because I've done them in previous places, and I've been like, oh, here we go, I'm this type of manager, and that's how I work.
Right.
But it's completely different to that. It really spent time looking at these tools and how you're not kind of put in a box. You have flexibility in some things you're better at, but then you can learn to be better at other skills, and you might not naturally do that, but over time you've learned how to do that, and you're actually better than that than some of the other kind of personality types or skill types,
Hmm.
which I don't think was really explained in other like management courses I've done, the 3 or 4 day courses. And you kind of do them, and at the end, sometimes you pick up, and there's always good for networking
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So there's a value to them. I don't think they were taught in the way which really I thought these are bit of a jolly kind of thing. Whereas in the NBA, I'm really surprised and come out how much I thought, oh, actually maybe I should look to get a mentor, and maybe I should try and a lot of the feedback stuff we did as well, which was really good compared to the management ones where they were great for procedural, like say you had to deal with a bad employee, there's
Yeah.
certain boxes you have to tick legally, and it was great for that. But then when they try to talk about how to change the culture, I didn't feel it was particularly useful then. And maybe that's just because I've been a bit early in my career, didn't quite understand how it all worked. But in the
Possibly.
MBA,
Yeah.
I was really surprised how that module was really useful. I think when we try and expand the company, that will come in handy in terms of
Yeah.
building culture from ground up, and um, how to inspire people and work with people and give feedback when things are getting badly, and accept feedback as well.
Yeah.
Which is a big part of startup life, is getting knocked back quite a lot, especially for money and and stuff like that. So you grow a bit of resilience, I think. So that's good. So yeah, but something worthwhile doing. I'm glad I did. Glad I did it, definitely.
Yeah, and I think those things you're talking about there in terms of, culture change and leadership and things like that, they're pretty complex topics, right? And they're really nuanced. And I do think there's a lot of value in formal learning and in courses and things like that to provide the models and that sort of stuff. But it's hard to go on a course and just learn it. I think, being immersed in it is kind of necessary. And I always think with leadership in particular and management, it's one of those things that it's one of the few things that I think you can't really learn without experience. A lot of things you can, but it's one of those things you just have to go through the cycles several times to kind of make mistakes and see what works and what doesn't. And because people are all different, right? What works here won't work there, and you've got to learn to read that. And I think it's really much more complex than people
Yeah,
think.
100%. Definitely, yeah, that is really tricky. And so we've not really expanded, so I've not really had to put it into practice too much. Work with co-founders, so maybe
Mm,
that's we pretty much work as a two most of the time. And then slowly we're getting more and more people on the team, and but obviously a lot of it at the moment we also almost like contract out. Let's say we're working with partners and stuff.
yeah,
So the only kind of real day-to-day basis is with my co-founders. So some of that feedback stuff, let's say, we really to put into practice a bit more to try and read each other. But I think it will be interesting, if we do expand or do change roles and go back to, with working with more people. Um, what if I've learned and how those learnings go. I think what is good though with the small company again, some of those things I could put into practice straight away. We didn't have any
right.
procedures or anything like that, so I can just kind of change how we did things quite easily. Whereas
Yes,
if
true.
you're in a big company, you may want to instigate change, but it's not always as easy as that. Um, so it's something which I may have to battle again in the future. You never know. So
Yeah, it's always evolving, but I agree with you. It's sometimes much easier, although, there are challenges with it. It's sometimes much easier to start with a blank piece of paper and design it than to change it, right? Because you've got all these legacy issues and people are used to doing things in one way, and it's hard to get them to, you can write all the policies you want, but it's hard to get them to actually do the stuff. And
definitely, I think
yeah,
there's textbooks and textbooks in there on that sort of subjects, and
yeah.
still I think people agree on the best way to do it. So yeah.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And is there anything? I'm sure there's a lot that you've learned over the last 4 years. There always will be in that phase of a startup, particularly. But is there anything you feel has been particularly important that you've learned over that time that perhaps if you were doing it again, you'd do differently, or if someone else was about to start out on that journey, that you'd advise them on? What would you share with someone in that position?
That's a really good question. I think the definitely in terms of expectations. So we would have like key inflection points, and we would get to them, and then we'd approach investors or advisors and say, "Oh, we've done this step now," and it wouldn't be enough. It'd be,
Mm,
"Oh, well, why don't you just try doing this or that?" And it's a bit, that's maybe a little bit disheartening. But I think the learning was kind of understanding that a bit more, not taking anything at face value. And some of the work we're doing with people, like, oh, if we can do that work, it's fine, no issues. And then when we start working with them, there's always issues in science and complications.
Right, yeah.
And we're a bit naive. We set a timeline for this and we set a budget for this, and now the timeline's overrun and the budget's overrun, and being more aware of that as we started the business, thinking this is how the real world works. So, but that naivety certainly comes in handy with, if we knew how complicated the regulatory hurdles would be, all the legals around it, you almost wouldn't start, because you'd be like, there's no way we're going to get this money. There's no way we can hurdle that. There's no way we can convince the FDA this is going to work.
Right.
You wouldn't start. But by the time you kind of get a couple of years in, you're so far in, there's almost no turning back. So you think, okay, we need to find someone who can make sure that this is going to get through the FDA. So I think it's a bit of both, but maybe, I don't know, maybe the correct word for it, but not taking things at face value. Something I think we need to learn a bit more, and I think still are learning about. So I think that's the big one. And then, I guess obviously hiring and working with the right people is quite an obvious one, but that's something which, you've got to get done right. We've had times where we've had to change people. We've had consultants only for a couple of months,
right?
And then we've had to change consultants, and even little things like bank accounts and that. We work with a bank which doesn't work, just working and tricky, and then swapped accounts to someone else, and it's now seamless. You call them up, they're really quick, and at the time you think a bank's a bank, but you've got to do all those little hurdles, and also understand that when you do work with people, not everyone's going to have the right answer. So we've spoken to people ex-FDA, because we're a drug device combination, and some person would be, oh yeah, you're definitely a drug, this is the route you need to take. And the other person, so no, you're definitely a device, this is the route you need to take. And you think, well, they're both from the FDA, they're both very well paid consultants, how they got completely different kind of advice. So that even working with these people who are experts, they don't always know either. So if you believe you can get it done, then you just got to kind of power it through, because it's always, second you speak to anyone, they're like, oh, here's where your problem is going to be. They never say, oh, okay, here's how we're going to fix it. They see our problem and go, yeah, that's going to be hard to get to the FDA. It's going to be hard to get to the FDA. So that can be quite disheartening, because you're just hearing reasons why you can't do it. But everyone comes around in the end and they help us. We're still going strong. But I think there are a couple of the learnings, as well as, as I mentioned earlier, you've got to learn to take a bit of it on the chin as well, because you're going to get a lot of no's and a lot of can'ts. So getting that naivety definitely helps, because if you just kind of walk into something knowing it's not going to be as hard as it is, it's great. So yeah.
No, it's a good point. I think, there's sort of there's a received wisdom, isn't there, that like you should take your business plan and assume that you're going to make half as much money and everything's going to cost twice as much, and see if it's still a good idea. And I personally, I think that's pretty restrictive. I don't know many business plans that could survive that, to be honest. But it's like you say, you got to sort of you've got to commit to the idea, haven't you? And you've got to commit to what you're trying to achieve. And regardless of why people tell you not to do it, or, sometimes they can have a good point about how you're doing something or whatever. But I think the art of being an entrepreneur is sometimes about, you just find a way to make it work.
That's it.
Might not be the way you thought you were going to do it, but
exactly that. Things like the woodwork, and you change routes that you're not going to do. And now with the manufacturing, we've done the same thing. We could do this route, is the best way to do it, it's going to work. And then all of a sudden we've changed our approach, because you got to be have that flexibility as well. Which is, I think that's why big companies like working with startups, because we can do that quite quickly. We can just go and whereas if you've got big plants and employees working on a project and it's not working, it's not that easy to quickly change and change that. So that's, again, one of the exciting things with it. But I say it normally costs money to do that, and then
of course,
then you're back to begging for money again.
No, that's it. And then, so finally, Darren, we are amazingly hurtling towards the end of 2022, and probably starting to think about 2023 as well. What's next for you guys? What's next for VisusNano, and what's on the agenda?
That's it. It's crazy. We probably always say we look at our timelines, but we're definitely going in the right direction. Our big plan now, kind of our big inflection point is the first in human trial. So that's probably going to be end of 23, potentially start of 24. So we're just gearing up for that. So that's going to be hopefully 10 patients. And we're really stepping into an area which I'm unfamiliar with, which is like saying earlier, the regulatory side of things. So that's an interesting, very time-consuming area for me and the company. Trying to get this advice built around what we need to do, so that when we do this trial, it is obviously safety that always comes first. That's quite an easy one to tick off because you stick to the rules and that, make sure it's safe. So that's one of the easier ones. But how we get there in terms of manufacturing, the packaging, and what stage we want to be at then, and getting it done on time. So that's kind of what our kind of day-to-day work is at the moment, pushing to that. But our big plan is to get to that first in human trial, and that will really be a great way to show this is effective. We can start hopefully making some noise and say, we've really got a good idea here, and then that's when we kind of plan to raise a big bit of money, hopefully, and then start going into the future trials. We've kind of scoped out what they would look like and how it would all work. I think our main goal now as a company is to get this into humans and say, look, we can do this. So just trying to make your way to get to that.
Of
give
course.
myself about a year to do it now. So I'd say it's quite scary when you say it's October because things are coming thick and fast. So.
They do. Well, it's an exciting time. It's a crucial time for you. I think it's a really huge problem that you're working on solving, and we wish you the best of luck with it. Thanks for joining us on Careers in Discovery, and don't forget to subscribe for more insight into the world of drug discovery and R&D. Do take a look at our sponsors, Singular Talent, and their mission to make hiring better for companies and individuals in drug discovery and R&D. You can find them at www.singulartalent.io. See you next time.